Good evening, I'm Amadin Ogbewe. Now tonight the conversation is about a personality, which is one of the things we do here on Top Talk, which is focused on persons who have interesting stories to tell. Tonight we'll be talking about a story or a tale of militancy to activism to farming. We're talking about someone who moved through these phases and has now become something and who decides to focus on national development. I'm talking about the Sarkin Yakin Gate in Kokona, Nasarawa State. That's what some people call him. That's his title. But he's also known as Retson Tedheke, a former militant who became an activist, a farmer, and even though he doesn't admit, has dabbled or dabbles in politics. He joins me tonight to tell me about his journey through these phases, what it means for the people out there, the people he represents, the people he calls the Agro constituency, the people he feels he can help and do the most for by being the liaison between them and the corridor of power. He tells me tonight how he transitioned through these phases and right now what he hopes to do, especially in the area of traditional and cultural importance and relevance when speaking of national development. Join us on the conversation. Right, Mr. Retson Tedheke, welcome to Top Talk.
Thank you for having me. This is the second time I'm coming in this shop. I love your studio.
Thanks so much. Thanks for coming again. Your story is a very interesting story. So I want to start as early as possible without going way into, maybe the day you were born or whatever. But if you feel like that's fair. But like I said in my intro, you're known to be the former militant who became a farmer, an agripreneur. So let's start with that militant aspect. How did you become a militant? What was happening? What was the story there?
Okay, so let me be brief.
Okay.
But I'm going to go from the beginning.
No problem.
I'm from Delta State. I'm Roboman, paternally. I'm from Equatorial River State, maternally. And schooled in Kaduna.
That's full Niger Delta.
Yes, schooled in Kaduna. Left Warri in 1989 for Kaduna State. Because my dad was Professor Moses Tedheke, the lecturer in MBA, so I had to go and meet him in Kaduna 1989. And then from Kaduna, schooled in Zaria, went to Zaria for school, served in Ondo State, Akure, from Ikare Akoko to Akure. And then from Ondo State, I settled down in Ondo State, then went back to the creek, sometimes 2004, 2005. Until Buhari became president and then dragged most of us back from the creek and said, look, let's go into agriculture. So my story is a Nigerian story. And so the militancy became necessary after the financial meltdown of 2007, 2008, the subprime sector. I was trading Forex, Commodities exchange, and so on and so forth. And so, we always have this running battle between me and my dad about the insanity of capitalism, and I always supported the Americans then because I felt capitalism gives individuals the ability to become really productive. Yes. But what happened after the financial meltdown was me realizing that, look, one thing about private capital and capitalism is that like Martin Luther King Jr. said, is that capitalism is rugged individualism for the ordinary people and state-sponsored socialism for the rich. So when the system is having challenges, those who have money, government support them to stabilize. And those who don't have, government gives them nothing. And so that drove me into the ideological understanding and relationship with the likes of President Muhammadu Buhari and of course Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So it was that madness also, was that problem that drove me to the creek. Because before then I've always felt that, look, Niger Delta guy, we should try and develop and make the place better. However, when my businesses started having problems, instead of trying to make the place better, I also became part of the problem because I was actually using the place to do what? To take care of my interests. I built a crude oil bunkering zone where I would tap into the creek, take crude from government pipeline, refine it, move the AGO all the way to Suleja to sell. And then so it became business for us. But like I told Fumi Yonda in one of the interviews I had, it can be interesting, but it can also be destructive. So you're living in a situation where you're actually making money to take care of your own interests and your own challenges, but actually destroying the people and the community that is actually your home, and you're doing nothing to better it. And so that was why we left that zone and then thought about agriculture, because at the end of the day, like when the US president said, as I think it was Eisenhower that said, agriculture is the greatest pursuit of man, because what it does, it takes care of the core need and interest of the human being. And when you are able to make it work and make it better, the capacity to be able to develop more of your people is actually enhanced, and the ability of them to become productive becomes a source of sustainability for the state. And that was why I went into agriculture. So that is a brief about who I am.
All right. Well, still speaking about that militancy and all that, you must have some wild stories. I don't know if you can share any of that. In the course of trying to take the oil, bunkering and all that, what were the things you encountered? Was there a day that it just struck you that I'm getting out of this? Or was it a gradual process where you started thinking, how do I live? How do I move on to something else?
I would say it for what it is. Now, dog chop dog. You are in the creek, in a bunker in the creek. What you're simply doing is you're literally stealing from government or stealing from your own people to enrich your own self. That is the primary theme of crude oil bunkering. People talk about the fact that we go, if you look at the story of Azikara Kaburu, we call him the father of the Niger Delta Republic because of the fact they said, I think a couple of these revolutions in the Niger Delta. The thinking has always been, let us fight for the interest of our people, right? That is actually what the entire militancy in the Niger Delta is all about. But if you look deep, you realize that it has become more of a personality-driven project. So some of us went in with the hope that, look, as we get something for ourselves, we are going to be able to evolve processes where we can hold the government accountable to take care of the need of the people. But they also say that they must start with money. They say money is the root of all evil, right? It can also be the root of all good. So when you get the money flowing in from the stolen crude in the Niger Delta, most of the time you forget about the interest of the people. So the drive was, let us go there, take care of our people, fight for their power. Power to the people. Let's ensure that the crude oil works for them. But if you go to the Niger Delta today, the crude oil is not working for most of the people in the rural Niger Delta communities. Because most of us who are supposed to fight for them, what did we end up doing? We ended up taking what belongs to the people and fighting for our own interest. So as regionally dynamic as it can get, it can also be it can also be driven by so much of ingrained selfish interest that end up destroying the nationalistic impact of what it can have. So you are no longer using what belongs to the people for the interest of the people. You are using what belongs to the people for your own interest, but telling the people you are fighting for them. That has actually become the bane of national development and growth in the country across board. We are talking about Boko Haram in the northeast, and we're talking about Sunday Igboho, who was talking about Yoruba Nation. Sorry to use the Yoruba Nation in the south, and we're talking about IPOB in the southeast. Almost every one of us who went into agitation went in because we felt that for us to be able to drive a narrative that sustain or support the development of our people, grows their capacity to become productive, we must fight for what is theirs and utilize that to make sure they are better. But then the end is always been, we got there, saw money, saw the resources, and took care of our own interests, and most of the time forgot about them. So at the end of the day, no matter how you look at it, the productivity of militancy is destroyed in the altar of egoistic, sentimental selfishness that does nothing to the interest of the people but focuses on our own personal pocket. And that is what drove me out of the creek. Of course, it drove me, President Muhammadu Buhari was just simply coming into government, was campaigning 2013, 2014, and then we said, well, he's a nationalist, he's someone who fought for the country in the 80s, he's someone who believed in Nigerian dreams in the 80s. Let's get away from the creek. Of course, the issue of life also came to play, because the threat also came in. You cannot develop. The problem with militancy and bunkering the Niger Delta is, if you go into that region trying to develop the people, trying to change your attention, trying to use what they have to develop the interest within the local communities, you're likely going to get stuck and get killed. So those became the factors that drove me out of the region.
All right. You've mentioned President Buhari a number of times. It's almost as though that was the driving force, that finally took you away. I just want to get something clear. Did the whole amnesty program and all that from the PDP era, from President Yar'Adua, did that not get to your own region? Was it really just the prospects of a new president in President Muhammadu Buhari that finally took you away, or gave you that hope that there's something else out there?
In all honesty, while the amnesty program did a lot, it did not solve the problem of our people. We did not need the amnesty program to solve the interests and the yearnings of our people, to make them feel comfortable. What we needed was real developmental initiative in the region. Now, boss, if they give me 5K every day, okay? If they give the youth from the Niger Delta 5K every day, and you tell them, say, I'm not going to make all the fights, and cash be this, take care of yourself. They give them 50K in a week, in about 10 days, and then 50K in a month, right? Between 150K, depending on the value of what you're giving to them, and 300K in a month. The question is, what is the developmental processes or initiative attached to this, what you are giving to the people? And so, yes, you have amnesty programs and so on and so forth, but most of them did not really attend to the needs of the ordinary Niger Delta people. So what you saw was some of us driven not by that stipend, but by a desire to see a greater need and a greater impact in the lives of our own people in the Niger Delta. Warri or Yenagoa or Port Harcourt or Benin and all the capitals of the Niger Delta region need 3 developmental initiatives. So what Yar'Adua and co needed to do, yes, you set up an amnesty program on short term, but you also initiate programs that are developmental, sustainable, and long term. So that as you wean the people off the free cash that is coming from the Niger Delta, you bring them into what? Into a long term developmental initiative that you will have tested. So, for example, how many plantations were set up in the Niger Delta after the amnesty programs? Palm plantation, cassava plantation, plantain plantation. How many fish? How many of our lakes and rivers did you convert to fish pond? So, because there was no real developmental initiative, some of us are not comfortable sitting on the same process that only gives you cash. Of course, a lot of us were sent for training overseas, Cyprus and so many European countries. Go and learn how to farm. Go and learn how to do fishery. Go and learn how to do welding. But you don't need to send us go there, go learn. I think go Lagos here, go learn how to do welding. Okay? Now, because the developmental initiative were not enough, most of us were looking at the fact that, okay, is there a possibility for us all to be focused on leadership structures that encourages us to utilize local opportunities for the greater good of the Nigerian people? And so when the Asiwaju and the Buharis of this world came up, I respect that man a lot, I like him a lot. When they came up, we were driven to support him, come out of the creek, campaign for them, vote for them, with the hope that we can actually have a different narrative, a different developmental narrative in the Niger Delta. Now, are we where we are supposed to be? Absolutely not. Has progress been made? Absolutely yes. I think the Bodo-Bonu Bridge, of course, people talk about the second Niger Bridge. A lot of developmental projects in Niger Delta focus on how do we get our people to become more productive. And of course, you see the recent Niger Delta, the NDDC appointment, chairman, thinking about training majority of our youths in agriculture and developmental opportunities in the Niger Delta, so that the focus will not be just on crude oil but what? But all the other productive component of the Niger Delta region. So the election of 2013, 2014, or 2015 that brought President Muhammadu Buhari simply gave us an opportunity to look at what was available, the amnesty programs on Niger Delta Commission and Niger Delta Ministry. I said, look, we can chart a new path. And these people look like President Muhammadu Buhari looks at someone, a president, who can take the interest of the Niger Delta, that is not just premise on amnesty and then giving money to people, but promise of developing them mentally, giving them capacity, making them more productive, and making them more developmental to ensure that the region becomes a region that is productive outside crude oil and increase not just our GDP, but the capacity of our people to become self-sustainable over the long haul. So that's why we came into the Buhari project and then APC and all the rest.
All right, so that's fair enough. So we've talked about the militancy and how you left. To the next phase of the journey, did you become a politician before you became a farmer? Were those two together? You know, what led to your current now?
I became an activist before I became a politician. I became an activist before I became a farmer. And then, let me just say the record straight. After the election 2015, 2016, if you remember, the Saraki Senate and then the Gora House of Rep was having a running battle with the presidency. So I think it was March, April 2016. I led the march against the National Assembly occupiers. And our aim was, look, we cannot leave the creek, come to Abuja, try to ensure that we have a political focus. And then you are going to have men like Saraki, Olusola Saraki, Senator Olusola Saraki that time, and then Dogara, who was going to come and mess the whole process up. So we led a march against National Assembly in April. And then at about August, September, we were preparing for the second occupier of National Assembly. People like Charlie Boy came into the program. And when somebody said recently that he stole Amumu from us, he did. I started Amumu Dondu with Occupy National Assembly 1, Occupy National Assembly 2. So he came in and said, look, I love what you guys are doing. Femi, Fallon, and SAN addressed us then. SAN also addressed us. In short, that was where me and Aisha Yusufu met, because we led the march, first Occupy National Assembly together in support of President Muhammadu Buhari fighting the National Assembly. So at least she changed and then went to obedient later. But that's where we all met. So the drive was, look, Amumu don't do. Okay? That was the mantra. Amumu don't do. Let's get something going. Charlie Boy, we brought all of them into the equation. Festus Keyamo also was giving us legal advice so that we can change the narrative. So I became an activist, from the militant to the activist, then from the activist to the farmer, and then from farming, the politician. But sorry, let me say it on air, I'm still not a politician, I'm still a farmer. Because the need of the rural Nigerian farmer needs to be the front burner. That was why some of us focus heavily on when Asiwaju spoke about Agro. You know, the insane sentimental ignorance of the average Nigerian youth and generation is, we don't understand what national development is all about. And sometimes we need to set the record straight. Agrarian revolution is known to be the foundation of all industrial revolution. And Nigeria is a virgin country with over 50, some figures will give you about 80-something million arable hectares of farmland. If you utilize 50% of that, which is about 40 million arable hectares of farmland, your GDP, you grow double-digit GDP per annum. You will not just do that, but your unemployment level will be in the single digits. And not just that, your export component with regards to trade balance as import and export will be favorable in the area from export as to import. You will not begin to have forest challenges. So we, like I said, I became from ex-militancy to activism to farm raid. We call it farm raid. Farm raid is a farmer and a comrade. So you add farm and comrade, it becomes a farm raid. So we added all of these components together to drive the new narrative for our country. And so I'm still not a politician, I'm still a farmer.
Right. I think that's fair enough, but you do identify with a political movement.
Absolutely.
So now let's talk about that.
Yeah.
People say that activists are just, they use the word cashivists for them, that they have a goal. It is not in the interest of the people and all that. So now let's talk about, you're actually a successful quote unquote, I'm not calling other activists unsuccessful, but the thing you wanted, the thing you drew for, you fought for, you got it.
Yeah.
President Muhammadu Buhari is the current president. We'll be rounding off 8 years come May 29. Now let's talk about what you achieved and if you feel it was worth it. The things you wanted, do you have them now? Are you proud of the performance of the government you helped bring in?
It is not a difficult question, but it's a strong question. So let me come from this angle. Am I proud of what we did? Yes, absolutely. Am I proud of the Buhari government? Absolutely. Do I feel that we are where we should be? No. But I am going to drive you back a little bit and then I've come from the Roman angle where they said Rome was not built in a day. You see, development and progress with regards to nationhood don't just happen. And I'm going to use the energy, the electricity issue, for example. When we were coming in, the stories were Obasanjo 16 billion. Of course, those figures have been discounted over time. But the 16 billion investment in energy, what they did, what was the impact? Now, when as activists, right, one of the things that activism does to you is to give you what I call the infatuated positioning with regards to government decision. You usually don't have an idea. When I was coming to agriculture, the thinking was that agriculture is very profitable. Oh, if you put 1 million for agriculture, within a year you don't make 2 or 3 million. Oban a lie. So the realization actually needs to be started setting in. Now, like I said, with regards to the power issue, power was bundled by who? By Jonathan. Each of the started with PACN and I think was under Obasanjo, then Jonathan, and so on and so forth. But because we are mostly driven by sentimental values, we never focus on the real foundational changes that needs to happen. If we must get energy right in Nigeria, we must actually begin to look at the foundation of energy in this country. What is happening to the transmission lines? So when it got to the issue of Abakari going to Germany to try and sort out the cement deal, finally for him he died, people didn't understand that you needed to realign the Nigerian energy infrastructure to focus on what is the foundation, then build the foundation and then grow from that foundation. Nigeria has never had a foundation when it comes to politics and governance. And so one of the things that the President Muhammadu Buhari, which I said, it depends on how you're looking at it. Is it the glass half full or is it half empty? Was you first have to build infrastructure. In my farm, when I got to the place, there were no roads, there was no lights, and there was no dam. I spent 125 million naira to build electricity, coming about 5 kilometers, right? 33 kVA line. That is not money I should spend. But instead, I had to spend that money because the foundation of rural infrastructure and development was lacking. And so, if the foundation is lacking, then the policy you put on that foundation can never stand. It was the same problem we had with Naira redesign policy of the Buhari government. I was angry with him on that policy. Because how can you be putting Naira redesign or Naira confiscation on a foundation that is weak? Rural Nigeria does not have infrastructure. We don't have telecom infrastructure. We don't have power infrastructure. We don't have mobile infrastructure. There's no infrastructure you have. You're not telling the bushman in the village to go and begin to do mobile banking. How will it happen? It's like telling INEC that once the people finish voting, you must upload results. How you want to upload on boss and say, for village, network no day. So most of us, with time understood that, look, we wanted miracle. But there was nobody to perform the miracle. So you needed people to build the foundation upon which those miracles can stand. I'm the traditional worshipper, but I remember early when I was young, when they taught us the miracle of the blind man, whether the blind man in the stream, and all he had to do was to take mud and rub on his eye. Sometimes forgetting that story now. What did he have to do? He had to take action. You are taking action based on what is available. And so, if you look at it from that dimension and from that angle, the President Muhammadu Buhari had to work with a foundationless nation where resources were available and they were not utilized. And if you look at it from that angle, his case is a success story. I am in Gati, in between Kefi and Garaku, so between Sabugida and Gwamayu, right? That road The Abuja Makurdi Expressway, they have been awarding that road for the last 2 decades. If you go to that road today, Buhari started it about 3 years ago, and it's almost it's 90% completed. So when you look at the infrastructural desire of a nation that needs to grow, Buhari scores, if there's anything above A++++, he scored that. Because even recently, if you remember, Joe Biden went to the American Congress and said, America needs infrastructure, because without infrastructure, the American economy can never stand. So if you build infrastructure to stabilize the future of your country, you have actually done something that is uniquely important for the growth of your people as a nation. So yes, you did well there. But like I said, it's either you look at it as a glass half full or a glass half empty. Are there areas that you should have done better? Of course, yes. Boss, before Buhari became president, for church, when we go church for this country, not the mobile police go guide our church entrance. Look what talk Masibina. Today, are you having that? Well, maybe it's really, you know that I often say that when I go after the obedience on social media and on Twitter, right? My thinking is simple. When I born you, was the idea created or started in 2015? You think the idea started in 2015? There were days in worry. What we say with the operation hands up. When they move forward, that's why we carry hand up. Because if you drop your hand down, army will take you out. With those crises in worry. When was the last time we had such crisis in this country? So yes, we are not where we should be. And it was Voltaire that said that perfect is the enemy of the good. It is when we begin to seek a perfect nation that we actually destroy that nation. What we need to do and what must happen with national development and with national growth is incremental progress. And that's why it's governance. That's why you have elections. Because Mr. A will start from point A to point B, Mr. B will start from point B to point C. Why do you think Lagos is as progressive and Lagos is as development as it is? Because from Asiwaju to Fashola, to Ambode, to Sawolu, the same party, the same system, continuing progress, maybe incremental, but what are you doing? It's like climbing a staircase. What happens with the staircase? Every step you take does what? Takes you higher. You can't jump from down to the top. Obedient wants us to jump from down to top. People wanted Buhari to make all the wholesome changes. Yes. The promises that were made. Yes, yes, promises were made. But Buhari never promised $1 is equal to $1. He never said it in any speech. He never said it in any gathering. In short, I remember when we went to Chatham House, he stressed the fact that we are going to be facing with such challenges. And the analogy to describe this, in closing my argument, is very straightforward and simple. Guy, you didn't work for NNPC. Your monthly salary was 300K a month. You can't lose your job. 3 kids, a wife, and you know for Nigeria, relatives are plenty. And then you finally got a teaching job as a supplement. Your salary is automatically go from 500K to what? To 50K. No how your children will complain, right? But then you have to work with, you have to manage what you have. I'm telling your kids to leave the private school to come to public school. You tell your madam, say, boss, babe, no verse. That plate of soup for 50K now, and 10K now. That was what happened to us in 2014, 2015. We collapsed from $100 a barrel of crude oil to barely Buhari first 1 year. Crude oil sold at less than $30 a barrel. It came to $27 a barrel. Where your cost of production was more than the revenue. So you were operating at a loss for about 2 years. What could only happen when it comes to governance? There was no way he was going to be able to perform miracle. People say don't borrow. If you don't borrow, what you do? As soon as you develop a tax model that almost every state in this country is adapting, and countries in Africa are also doing the same thing, you are complaining that it's taxing Lagos too much. Buhari that is borrowing, you are complaining that it's borrowing too much. But what do you want now? So you have to begin to look at it from even if promises were made. It was Mario Cuomo, one time governor of I think of New York, that said you campaign in poetry and you govern in prose. When the campaign go provoke, go on. This road, I will build it for you in 1 year. When you reach the ground, say the money will build the road for 1 year. You pay salary. You go do whatever.
But what about some indices? Some indices, double-digit inflation, 30 or 20 million Nigerians in multidimensional poverty. There were 3 issues I believe that President Buhari campaigned on: corruption, economy, security. Now, anytime I speak to some APC members of us, they always reference that the period where churches were not safe and all that. But, we had one Chibok level event where children were... Yes, they were, what's the word? They were kidnapped.
Yes.
Till today, I do not believe all of them have been returned.
Yeah.
But it was such a very big deal that we need our girls back. But since then, we've had at least about...
Majority of them will be returned. I think we have about 10 or so that are still left.
In the Chibok, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, but my point now is, in the Buhari government, we've had... let me not put a number to it, but we've had multiple accounts of kidnappings where a bunch of people are kidnapped and, we don't know how many end up returned. There's no movement for them. There's no hashtag and so on and so forth. So these issues, can it be said that, it should have done better in these places, and at least it's not enough to try someone different? Because
of course we're trying someone different, we're trying to
but it's still under the APC.
Yes,
it's still the same party.
You're right when you talk about the fact that yes, we campaign on security, economy, and security and corruption. Yeah. With regards to corruption, nobody has performed better than he has done. You look at the indices, EFCC, the arrest, the recovery, Obasanjo, Yar'Adua, and all of them.
But the corruption perception index...
Of course, you're right. Corruption perception is around a perception, but we're talking about cases, recovery, and so on and so forth. He's done better than anybody, right? We're also right when we talk about insecurity. Are we, like I said earlier, are we where we want to be? No. But the first, I talked about foundation, building the foundation upon which every other thing stands, right? So let's look at the foundation of insecurity. One of the biggest challenges we had was that the Nigerian Army and the Nigerian Armed Forces was not well equipped. What Buhari has done with regards to President Muhammadu Buhari has done with regards to equipping the military is unprecedented. Not just with regards to aircraft, with regards to manpower, with regards to recruitment, with regards to the availability of resources for the army, is unprecedented. So that's with regards to that. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit before we go to inflation you talked about. Now, it is important to know that you first have to develop the foundation and the capacity before you can actually become productive, even in fighting against corruption and fighting against militancy and banditry across the country, as you have seen in the past. Like I said, it is not El Dorado. More work needs to be done. I will not score him 100%. I may not even score him 80%. I may not even score him 70%. But if I score him 60%, it's progress, right? Then we'll talk about the inflation issue. The world, okay, is having an inflationary challenge. The Federal Reserve in the US is struggling with inflation. The Bank of England is struggling with inflation. The National Bank of China is struggling with inflation. There's a global inflationary challenge driven primarily by unreliable crude oil prices. They are up today, they are down tomorrow. Of course, COVID, you saw the impact of COVID on the global economy. In the case of Nigeria, you saw what, I'm a farmer, so I can tell you what NSAS did to us with regards to supply during that period. And then you see multiple recession and so on and so forth all over the world. And because the world is a global village and we are interdependent and interconnected with regards to economic activities, the inflation of one will affect the inflation of the others and the challenges of the other. And that is one of the reasons why the drive of President Muhammadu Buhari to go into rural Nigeria, into agriculture, should be appreciated because, bros, if, for what is what, Buhari has not invested as much as he did in agriculture, we can make the case that the impact has not been as well felt as we expected it to be. But if you have not invested that much, I can assure you that inflation would have been higher, the challenges would have been more, and the problems would have been endemic. So, yes, the prices are up. And I often look at, as a farmer and as a processor, price of rice, for example, is selling anywhere from 33 to about 45,000 per bag of rice today. Why? Because of production issues. Another reason is because of the forest issues, and we have to import a lot of paddy. So more needs to be done with regards to investing in local productivity, in the Agro economy, in the cassava economy, in the soya beans economy, in the cattle economy. We need to begin to invest more and drive our development as a country from local productivity powered by rural Nigeria, so that we can have, you can say, yes, progress is necessary, but the foundation is important. So if we want to talk about the prices inflationary, look at the global inflationary trend. You realize that the entire globe is suffering an inflationary pressure, driven because, and those of you are in ICT, I'm going to say this, you people are part of the problem. You know, at the time, I said, you're not fit wake up one morning and say, okay, I don't chop. Or you press your laptop and say you don't chop food good, right? We need to go back to what works. We have the land, utilize it, become more productive, use that city to what? To make them more productive. There's something can go right. So very focused on that. Like I said, can it become, would it have done better? Absolutely. But did it fail in that area? It did not. Because look at nations that were not productive. The IMF forecast for 2023 came out recently. Nigeria's growth is projected at about 3.2% GDP, right? We are like that's like the 5th best in the world. When huge nations like the US are struggling to grow at 1.2%. So people can wake up and say, but 3.2% is not enough for us to be able to push down the inflationary rates, push down unemployment rate. We need to get about 6 to 7%, if not double digits. But like I said, they're not the child make manhood rise. You need to build the foundation, create sustainable factors that can give you longevity in economic sustainability. That was what President Muhammadu Buhari did. So even if I will not score him, maybe not 75%, at least I score him around 60, 65%.
All right.
You don't try.
All right. Now, a quick one before we move over back to your story specifically. As an activist and all that, we know that activists tend to focus on the little guy. Yeah. You're always on the part of the powerless over the powerful. Do you feel in any way guilty that, as it stands now, you are basically on the side of the people who have the most power?
How about bros? You look person that is driving the Agro revolution and you call him being on the side of the people with power. Agro is maize, masara, oka.
When you say Agro, you mean the actual plant or?
Yes, Agro is maize. But I'm talking about what he spoke about. It was a soldier that came up and said, you have any security in the north. How do you solve that security in the north? Is to employ a lot of these youths who don't have job into the army. Train them. But in training them, how are you going to be able to take care of them? Develop your local capacity. The Agro, cassava, and the rest, right? So me, who became a core proponent, I drove the Agro revolution narrative and program across the country with regards to, like I said, I'm a secretary on agriculture. You can't look me where they say that Agro be the foundation of everything, and you got to say they stand at the side of the I believe the common man. But what you come and pass Agro? Now maize now. Now can and maize only the shoe. The foundation of industrial development must be rural for you to become successful. And if it is rural, it is people-driven. And if it is people-driven, it is premise on how you can activate what matters in the life of the ordinary person. So when I talk about Agro, when we talk about the Agro revolution, I'm talking about the common man. And that is why I can look at you and I can look at Asuwaju, I look at any one of them matter. Whether the one I went to now tell the Buhari that very well, when I use that language, everybody was saying that I was too aggressive. Because the issue is now you are confiscating Naira. The common man who is in Nigeria is going to struggle, and he wants us to look at you and say, President, well done. I will tell you that President, well done. So no matter how much I support you, that was the wrong policy. Of course, the governors came up against it and they said they wanted to buy vote. Which one the buy vote? For rural Nigeria, I want to say, no, so most of the time, some of my staff, casual workers get 700 naira a day, and that's enough for them to feed the family, right? So how can you accuse me of being among the elite? The elite, the masses, always need a voice. So when some of us come up to become that voice, it does not mean that we have become part of the elite. But if the elite stay in Abuja, now farm, I want to sit down and talk to them. I go show you where they're dinner. We go, yeah, we sit down for table. So if I begin sit down for table, begin follow them, drink wine, or drink ogogoro as an you can't begin to say because I follow and drink ogogoro, all of a sudden I never go on people. If I don't hire, I have to provoke for them. So I go hire small, provoke for them. Then I can go back to the bar and say, look, I don't want with them. We could give them like 1 or 2 months, we will misbehave. We can't touch them small. So I mean, I've never lived in the roots. I'm a grassroots person, I am a people-oriented person, and that is never going to change.
All right.
And so I is also a people-oriented person.
Okay, we'll take a word for it, and we'll definitely hold him accountable like you hope to do too. So now, I want to take it into a bit of a dicey area. I don't know if you're open to talking about it.
Yes,
but you've said yourself that you're a traditional worshipper.
Yes.
I just want to know, how do you have that, how do you beat the stigma? You know, in most forms in Nigeria here, you have Christian, you have Muslim. there's no space for traditional. Even taking a look at the election that just held, there was Muslim tickets, there was Christian Muslim, and people were agitating. Christians are not represented here. This person is doing a Christian campaign. Nobody ever says what happens to the traditional worshipper. So I want to know where did you get this zeal to be able to fight that stigma and say, stick to it in public and otherwise? Like
I often say, you cannot be interested in the lives of people who are not, and actually still become a Muslim or Christian. For people like us, the slave trade was a Christian-driven trade, the Western trade and so on and so forth. And my ancestors did not take themselves into slavery, they were forced into slavery. And after forcing them into slavery, you dominated our communities, dominated our people, and then, of course, colonialism came. Then from colonialism came neo-colonialism. All of them were tools of the whites of the Western world to subdue the typical African person, the black man, to do their bidding. Now, most of the time when I have to feel firm and I don't see traditional job, I ask them, please, I'll not be Christian, I'll not be Muslim. Can I write it there traditional? And they say you can write, so I write. Because there's no stigma at all. You see? If people without, like it was Marcus Garvey that said, the people without the knowledge of their roots and their history can never grow, can never develop. And I'm going to take you to two key examples. Why do you think the Asian economies are doing very well? Because the Asians have a cultural identity that was never stolen from them by the West. You've heard the story of Mahatma Gandhi in India. You've also heard the story of how the Christians were taken out in China, in Japan. Okay? Where the emperor ordered that there should be no religion outside the traditional religion of the Japanese people. Don't forget that Confucius is the official, religion of the Chinese, and about 1.6 billion people, right? Hindu and all the rest, they exist. So what some of us do is to remind you of reproductivity, right? The Chinese economy is currently the most productive economy in the world. Are they a Christian economy or Muslim economy? None of the above. The percentage of the Chinese population that is Christian or Muslim is less than 5%. The same thing in Japan. Okay, Malaysia, yes, Malaysia is a Muslim nation. Dubai, that most of us go to for tourism. You said there are more Christians that go to Dubai for tourism than Muslims. Dubai is a Sharia state, right? And so we must get to a point in this country where the narrative must elevate beyond the religious sentiment, what I call the parochialist sentimental religious sentiment, and focus on the developmental issues. The day when if you stand in front of me, pray, oh blood of Jesus, Wallahu Akbar, and food chew for table. The day that after you pray finish, food chew, or money enter my pocket, that is the day I'll go back to Christianity and then or Islam.
Does traditional worship do that for you?
It doesn't. What I simply do is to go back to my roots. So if what you have will not give me, if what came, all of them were foreign now, our forefathers. I often say that the best of people, driven by an ideology that was focused on not just longevity, but on care for the society, were our grandparents decades ago. They were not Christians or Muslims, but they were good people. They lived longer, their children were good people. So if religion is a factor, or like a quote that says, if you need religion to do good, you will need religion to justify evil, right? You don't need it. And if I have to adapt yours to become superior to mine, then I will rather keep the one I already had. We have traditional shrine all over the country. I go to my traditional, anytime I'm in Yoruba, I look for my traditional shrine, I go there. In my state, I look for traditional shrine, I go there. My only is I'm being focused on my roots, on my people, on my ideology, and on my history. And that is why some of us were angry with Obasanjo for taking history out of our schools. Because who is Thor? You've seen the movie Thor. Who is Thor? Thor is a Greek mythology now. It's the same as God,
Norse mythology.
Norse mythology, exactly. And these are also what? These are like Ogun. If you have David Cameron, is it David or James Cameron, the popular director, come to Nigeria and take Ogun and do a movie with Ogun, all of us will begin to look at Ogun differently. So it's all about cultural strengths. And that's why they said it is the victors that write the history of humanity. It's not if you are conquered, you can't write history. And so for generations, the Africans did not tell their own story. I want to say, look, the Christian crusaders, the evangelism was done with the sword. The jihad was the resistance to the Christian crusaders coming in from the west. So that battle was fought for generation. But what happened in Africa? In Africa, we were conquered because we did not invest in weapons of war. We were peaceful people. Now, you have conquered us in the medieval era, and you have conquered us generations ago. Today, you don't want to conquer me with Christianity and Islam. When I have my ancestors in the village. Now, if, like I said, if the focus is on development, then let us develop with culture. If you go to China today, the way the Chinese build their houses 1,000 years ago is the way they are still building it today. Am I correct? But you come here, you come to Africa here, come to Abuja, they look at skyscrapers, you're building like the Americans. And then you begin to ridicule the mats or the mud that the Fulani man is using to build his hut. And I remind you that if you focus on just building the way the Fulanis build, for example, right? Use mats and use mud. Do you know the value of the mud industry that you are going to have? China, my dad told me that was 1997 or 98, that China was making $4 billion from exporting clay. Think about it. Just think clay. When they build those houses, China is making $4 billion from exploiting clay. I don't know the value right now. Imagine how much you can make from that clay. If you focus on the cultural component of your economy, integrate your culture into your economy, and let it become the foundation of your own growth. I think the Asians, if you go to places where we're importing rice from Thailand, they don't use huge tractors. They are on their oxen. They see farm with oxen. They attach, they build all this dynamic okada that can have tillers and so they build based on a cultural understanding of the needs of their people. There's a program on Netflix. I don't know if I can go. It's a Japanese program where they teach children from youth how to go to the market, go to the street, but cameras will be attached to protect them. And if you go to every Japanese home, there's a shrine. A shrine to who? A shrine to their forefathers, to their fathers. Once anybody dies in Japan, they create a shrine for the person in their homes. That society is 100 times more developmental than our society. So the issue is, there is nothing wrong with our cultural integration as a premise of our national development that sustain the longevity of the reliability of our people on their own culture to become the economic strength like it's done all over the world. What is the economy of Saudi? What is the economy of Saudi and Israel? This economy, the tourism component of this economy, people coming from all over the world to drive this economy, is a lot of money. So who said we cannot do that with the Oni of Ife, the Ife Empire? Who said we cannot do that in the north or do that with Ahmadiyya? Or you come to the desert and do SMO? So when you see us talk about our culture, our tradition, our story, we're talking about a life that must become the foundation of our growth. And a clear example in closing is this. What is the language of development in German? Is it English? No. What is the language of development in China? Is it English? No. What is the language of France? French. Portuguese? No. English? No. Brazil? No. So why should English become the language of development in Nigeria here? Let me tell you what can happen if you make Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba the central language of development in Nigeria. Give yourself a decade. You become as productive as the Americans. You know why? Because what you think is illiteracy in rural Nigeria, all of a sudden become a strength. If you teach the local Hausa man how to break down and repair and fix a tractor in Hausa, he becomes more educated than the English who understand how to fix a tractor in English, or if not equally educated. So what was done to the African psyche was to destroy, like George Wilson said, he said, if you control the mind of a man, you control the man. So what the West did was to control our mind, and then give us the person that they stretched out in heaven. Sorry, who did tip our crude oil? Saraki, I'm not so sorry to, let me call it in name. All the Nigerian leaders who are sitting and say, where they carry them to go? Is it not to the West? So the people that advise you that give you the Bible and say, do not lay your treasure for yourself on earth, but lay them in heaven. The pastor and the man of God in Nigeria has all the treasures on earth. So why would I don't want to listen to what he says. Let me do exactly what he's doing. Why do I lay the treasures on earth here? The foundation of tradition is the premise of key national development. Culture drives growth, and growth is how nations are built.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Tedheke, for that. It's been an enlightening and a very fun conversation. Thank you very much. Thank you.